you feel like you're speaking a different language sometimes, especially if you're the parent trying to understand how your child learns? This episode is for parents and educators who want to truly understand dyslexia, not just as a label, but as a different way of thinking that can be nurtured. You'll learn how to communicate with dyslexia in a way that helps children thrive and empowers parents with practical tools. Welcome back to the Champion Mindset Collective. I'm your host, Anthony Dahya. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Since our last chat, my guest has deepened his work in such a meaningful way. He's been taking a big message and refining it conversation by conversation, and it's a real testament to commitment and clarity. Russell Van Brocklen is a New York State Senate-funded dyslexia researcher and founder of dyslexiaclasses.com. His unique program helps college-bound students significantly improve their writing skills, allowing every participant to graduate college without accommodations. Russell's method, which focuses on articulation first, is based on Yale neuroscience research. His approach is now available to parents through an online course on School, taught by certified teacher Angela Ritsuki. Russell, it's great to have you on the Champion Mindset Collective. Welcome.
Thanks for having me back.
It's a pleasure.
Well, I have to tell you, I like coming back for, second, third times because I like how just dedicated you are in your preparation. It really makes it so much easier to come back and knowing exactly what you're looking for. I'll tell you, the first time around, we met on Podmatch. I've done over 300 of them in a little over a year. And I can tell you your preparation and how much just you put into the show is rather on the minority side. So this is great to come back.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear this feedback because that is what I'm setting myself apart from anyone else that's out there. So yeah, I want to create a really good show that people can actually, well, not it's not even a show. I call it my university because this is where I'm learning from the best. Russell, for those who maybe haven't heard your story before, tell us a little bit about your journey in life from childhood to now.
Well, I have the worst case of dyslexia people have practically ever seen. And yes, that's verified by a New York State-funded study of my brain, where my base reading and writing skills of that is a sixth grader. A 6-year-old. And when I turn my brain on, my writing and reading go up to about the 70th percentile of entering grad students. And then it can go back down again. It's a light switch. So essentially what's going on is this is the dyslexic brain. I'm going from not using this back part of the brain, which the dyslexic has essentially next to nothing, to the overactive front part that's about 2.5 times overactive. And according to Yale, that's word analysis followed by articulation. So what got people interested in what I do is I did the New York State Assembly internship program in 97, and I showed up with a first grade reading and writing level. I couldn't do the internship the way it was designed. So the speaker's office, Sheldon Silver, threw a ton of money at me to give me the accommodations, give me these insane accommodations. And it worked out brilliantly. They recommended 15 credits of A-. And then I went and showed up to my home university, SUNY Center at Buffalo's political science department. And they looked at my accommodations and they said, we don't like these. So we're lowering your grade to 15 credits of F. I just said, giving up everything to solve dyslexia so this doesn't happen to everybody else. So it went from an A- to an F because they didn't like the accommodations. I went to audit 2 law school classes. On my second day, I was called on in law school. I ended up arguing with the professor for 15 minutes. He had to call it quits. He crushed everybody else and I argued with him for 15 minutes. I learned to read within a month and write within a couple of years. Then I spent a couple of years going through the notoriously horrible process to get New York State Senate funding. And I took a bunch of dyslexic high school kids, super motivated, super intelligent, 1 class period a day for the school year. They went from the middle school writing skills to the average range of entering graduate students. All went out of college, all graduated, GPAs at 2.5 to 3.6. Cost to New York State taxpayers was under $900 a kid. We were 100% successful. The best transfer college at the time was 25 to 30% successful. It cost over $100,000. So that's how I got started.
Wow. Now, Russell, since we last spoke, you said that you've been on something like over 300 episodes of podcasts.
Yeah. So we met on Podmatch, and then what this has allowed me to do, because do you remember in university and high school, all those papers you wrote?
I never went to university. This
Oh,
is my
okay, but
university. This
okay.
is my university.
Do you know the writing you do now? Do you remember in high school all those papers that you wrote?
A little bit. I wasn't that great at school though.
Well, I'll tell you, I wrote exactly none of them. I always gave oral presentations instead. So what that allowed me to do is just to bring up precisely what my statistics are, because I was the number one guest on Podmatch for like forever. Currently, I've done 307 shows with 276 five-star reviews. I'm currently ranked number 12 because I'm going back on a lot of shows I've been on. I've had about 37,000 listeners and a social media impression of about 3.8 million. And the reason why I've done all that is because now if you Google my name, it's everywhere. And it helps out when people say, well, why can we trust you? I said, do you have any idea how much fun it is to get on a podcast, then to do all the prep work for it, and then have the host really interview you? My review rate is around 88%, which is extraordinarily high. And I said, you can't fake this stuff. And do you think I've been able to fool 276 people? And they're like, no, that would be kind of, not happening. So it's helped to give me a tremendous amount of credibility. And I'm in the process of coming out with my first book, If You Write, You Can Read. And I've gone to a number of podcasters to help write blurbs for that. The problem I'm running into is I got way too many of them. So my editor's screaming at me. She's like, I try to get people to get some blurbs from, podcasters and other people that matter online. And I said, yeah, well, she's like, yeah, yours is ridiculous. We got far too many of them. It's a good thing.
Now, in that sheer volume of conversations that you've had, what has that taught you about communicating complex topics like dyslexia?
The key thing is it's given me the ability to just, through hundreds and hundreds of times, to know what do I want to communicate and how do I want to do it? When I want to communicate a story, when I want to communicate part of it, what should I say? And it has allowed me to refine things to an extreme degree. For example, when I'm explaining how to do an advanced body paragraph, I use universal themes. I start off with a movie review. Instead of actually writing the movie review, I just discuss the general process. And I found out just practicing it literally on probably a dozen podcasts, I can go and chop out this amount of material because this doesn't really matter. And it's just allowed me to keep trying new ideas, refining it. My assistant said, I'm so sorry, I screwed up. And I had a podcast in like 5 minutes. And normally I prep for at least a half an hour to an hour before a show. And I had no ability to do that. So I show up and I said, okay, just to make sure, what were you looking for from me? And then the podcaster told me, I was like, okay, I knew exactly what to do, exactly what to say. 30 minutes, they want to cover it. And I just knew exactly what they wanted. That's what it's done. And I can tell anybody that's out there to take a year, just really work Podmatch, really get your stuff out there, and it'll just leave you with an online presence that is incredibly, incredibly important. When I say, no, 100 podcasts isn't enough, I wanted 251 five-star reviews. I'm at 276 now. And I've slowed down. I used to do, 2 or 3 things with Podmatch a day. Now I'm down to about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've gone the other way. I'm releasing 3 episodes a week now. And so you're my third interview for the day today. So.
Yeah, but podcasters do that. Even when I was the number one guest for months and months and months, I was always overall ranked maybe 12th, 20th. I was never going to be number one on the system because podcasters, by your very nature, you do a lot of podcasts per week. And as a guest, what you're trying to do is spread your expertise. Now, people ask me, when am I going to start my podcast? And I said, are you insane? You know the amount of work you have to do? I'm dyslexic. No, thank you. I'll just play the guest.
Well, Russell, what I've done is I've automated a lot of the stuff with using AI, and I've got 72 guests in my pipeline as of today. And can you imagine how I manage those? Well, I've built a whole guest management system that actually manages all that on autopilot.
I fully understand with what you're doing. My area with AI, it is taking so long to get my final book edited that I wanted to start early how to use a book to go and let people know what I'm doing, to send things out. So in order to test that, I was on another podcast, and they professionally show you how to write your book and do all that sort of stuff. And they run excellent, so worth it. If you have the 4,000 to 6,000 a month, they are excellent at doing that. Well, what I decided to do was to say, okay, I don't have 4,000 to 6,000 a month that I want to spend on this. So I went and I literally got their book. And then I took my iPhone and I photographed every page. And then the AI would not turn that into a finished transcript. So I literally copy and paste it into a Word document. And then I ran it through the AI and I said, how did it do? And it said, good overall, but, and then I'm jobbing back between Claude and ChatGPT. And I turned that into a book that's 295 pages. And I was literally doing that all last night, having Claude do that. Then I went and I had that completely edited. I have 3 editing modes that nobody else uses that I created to really go from draft to something that's workable. And then today I redid the book so that I could hand out as a PDF document. Right now, it's just finishing the editing process. And that one is like 60 some odd pages. And it's right now being put into going through the final conversion into a PDF. All this was done in the last 48 hours. So I don't automate as much as a lot of people do, because I found that when I'm going through my editing modes, I don't get the good quality as if I tell it to start each time. And these are the changes I want to make. And I just sit there hitting it again and again and again. And it produces, I'm at about 90% of final publish ready. And most people are just happy with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, what I've done is I've actually created a book writing module, basically, because my vision is to create a book per season of this podcast and for each guest to be featured in it. So yeah, that's the plan anyway. But let's go back to you. It's enough about me. What surprised you the most about talking to so many different hosts and audiences?
What really got me was, as a general rule, how much more professional and well-prepared podcast hosts are compared to podcast people put on podcasts compared to the guests coming aboard. I've heard so many nightmare stories about people like me coming on not prepared. And what I really found is I like going on the ones when I'm coming back the second time, we know each other. People ask me much better questions. It's much more relaxed. I would have to say the biggest one I was on, it was a dyslexic gentleman from Canada who literally went through hell during World War II. And when I did my first guest, he had like 950,000 YouTube subscribers. Now he's at like 1.3 million. Yeah, the social media went up like crazy when I went on for the second time. But I've just noticed that what I'm able to do coming out the second time is the first time, it's honestly, it's a crapshoot. I have no idea what I'm walking into. But on the second time, what I'm finding out is it's just a much more relaxed conversation. I'm getting much better numbers because people have seen me before. And what I'm starting to notice is podcasters are telling me, yeah, well, I heard you were on, Joe's podcast or this. And as a dyslexic, I'm not good with names. And I'm like, okay, 1 second. Let me go to my CRM so I can know who that is. It's just been great the second time around because people now know me. I'm now a known quantity. So what I would tell people who want to get their message out there, I took this insane idea and I just kept doing podcasts. The problem is on Podmatch is after you burn through all the recommendations they give you, people are on the leaderboard for a month or two and then they're gone. I've been on it for like the past 8-9 months. All right. And what I do is I'm constantly going on podcasts that have nothing to do with dyslexia. And they go, why are you doing that? I said, well, right now, what I'm finding is my acceptance rate is roughly about that of the population who deal with dyslexia. So when I go on a podcast, their kids have it, their niece has it. They have a personal interest. And that allows me to spread to that part of the audience. And the main thing is just to give yourself a reputation online. Remember, AI is now, I'm hearing this, that AI is now doing more searches than humans. And you can't fake a podcast.
No, AI is totally everywhere now. I mean, to give you an idea, I've actually built a dashboard that shows me how many crawls I'm getting on my website and on the content that I've got, and it's just going crazy. Like, I've got crawlers coming and crawling different episode pages and taking it away.
Yes. And when people Google something that used to mean something, now ChatGPT comes back and tells you this is what they're looking for.
100%.
There's actually a process on how to make everything workable, on how to do that. So instead of me dropping, an insane amount of money to have somebody do it, I am actually learning how to do that myself because it is that worth it.
Yeah.
And that plus I go on to a lot of shows where I'm the AI expert. People ask, well, how do you become an AI expert? Well, it was December of 2024. And ChatGPT came out with its $200 a month pro plan. And people were like, you got to be insane. And I said, exactly. It's only $200. And I bought it that day and I haven't looked back.
Yeah. Yeah, we discussed that last time when you were on the podcast about the $200 plan that you'd taken up.
Yeah, and currently I have switched over to I'm on Anthropic now using Claude, and I'm doing $20 a month for ChatGPT. And people ask, well, why did you do that? Well, I try to get ChatGPT to think for about like 5 to 10 minutes. That's all I really need. I don't need it to think for, half hour. And I can do that now with its, $20 a month plan. So I switched over to Claude, and yeah, I maxed that thing out like crazy. The few days when they had Fable 5 on, I literally went and I had a curriculum, my original curriculum. I needed to update that. And it went and updated my 9,000 word how to teach it to 50, and then completely redid the first part, which was 20,000 words. And I got it up to 100,000. I did everything. And then they pulled it off the market. But man, did I get use out of it over those couple of days it was available.
Good on you for getting into it before it disappeared.
I just was like, are you kidding me? I've been trying to do this for 20 years. I just ran everything through it. So when they pulled it, I was like, oh, well, I already got most of what I want. I said, I'll be back at some point. But yeah, other people were so upset because they planned to max out that weekend and then it was gone.
Yeah. Did you find your own understanding of dyslexia shift through all the conversations you've had?
Not shift, refined how I instruct. So what I've found is when I'm doing this, again, this is the top book on dyslexia, Overcoming Dyslexia by Dr. Sally Shaywitz from Yale. I just keep going back to this part saying, this is what the normal brain is. This is dyslexic. We got to use the overactive front part. And people can see that. What I found interesting is when I started giving examples. So I found that I do basic sentences, because dyslexics are randomly placed misspelled words. And then I would jump right up. I would skip the basic body paragraphs, because what I found is people can follow the basic sentences, and we can discuss that, with one of my paid courses. But then how to do the biggest part of the advanced body paragraphs, because then I could show. I've worked with PhDs, and here's the one that I love doing. What if I told you I could show you how to write a much better body paragraph? Would that surprise you than what you're currently capable of doing?
Yeah, it would.
Okay. So just to give you an example, I'm just going to show you how I do this. Changed everything. And it gives the most value of anything I was able to create. The first thing that I would have to do is tell you we're going to show you how to write an advanced body paragraph, where anybody outside of a PhD candidate is going to learn something how to do this better. So the first thing that I figured out when I was trying to explain to people is when you're dealing with dyslexics, you have to focus on their speciality and teach them from the specific to the general. Well, how do you do specific to the general? I said, we're going to start off with a universal theme. So what I'd like you to do is think of about a movie that you saw that meets 3 criteria. You know it intimately. It's one of the best of all times, and everybody's seen it. What's the name of that movie?
Yeah, the latest one I saw was Michael.
Michael. Okay. Now, this is where I found to demonstrate the difference of the dyslexic brain. So here's a tough one I have for you. Reduce Michael to a one-word universal theme that best represents that movie in that one word in your own unique point of view. What's that word?
King.
King. Okay. Now, do you see how you had to think about it for a moment?
Yeah.
When you're dyslexic, you come up with that instantaneously because now you're dealing with the overactive front part of the brain. A lot of people will think for like 10 seconds, 30 seconds. These are people with masters and doctorates. They're like, the next thing is when I want to describe how to do the review, I don't do the review anymore. I would just say, you would take the actors and say, how would they do with the universal theme of King? Did the director do? How did the screenwriter do? All right. But here's the problem. If you go and you write that up, here's the issue with King. It's a broad brush. We need to get something much more specific. So how do we do that? And when I run it, then I go and I explain quickly the story of how I figured out who's writing teaching style to model this off of. So I went to the professors and I said, who in the English language history, in the history of the English language, who's the best at communicating ideas through writing? And they all said one name, Shakespeare. Then I throw out this typical joke and people actually get a laugh at this. Literally, I'm going to traumatize a part of your audience because we're going back to high school English and we're going to study Shakespeare just for a moment. I normally get a good laugh out of that one. So then I just kind of explain what Shakespeare did. You have a hero wants to accomplish something based on universal themes. You have an ultimate villain that's a character, concepts, universal themes, try to stop the hero from accomplishing their goal. They have a conflict in Act 1, accelerates in Act 2, resolves Act 3. We have to simplify that. Now, when people hear me say that, they understand I'm using a simplified version of Shakespeare, using a universal theme. They get it. All right. So when we're looking at word analysis, the overactive front part of the brain, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to teach dyslexics to read, which, by the way, my competition can do in a couple of years. No joke. It takes 2 years. So we have, let's say we're looking at Michael Jackson's movie. Let's just say that's the area of extreme interest and ability of the student you're going to teach. The first thing you're going to do is pull out a laptop computer with a real keyboard, not an iPad, not an iPhone, and certainly not handwriting. It's a real keyboard. They're going to be typing. And you're going to have them, we already assume that they've done a previous course we taught and they can do basic body paragraphs. They're going to write out 5 to 20 paragraphs on what the hero wants to do, typing everything. Once they do that, for each sentence, they're going to pull out the most important word for each sentence. They're going to type it out. Then they're going to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, pick their definition, type out the definition. You have zero trust in these kids. They are going to try to copy and paste. They can't. They have to type everything. They're going to do that for all the most important words, and they're going to pick the one that they think is the best one. Now we have the same problem we did with your broad brush, with your universal thing. We have to focus. So how do we do that? We take what they think is the best one, we put in the thesaurus, and we come up with 5 synonyms, 10 synonyms, the whole level, multiple levels. Most parents will pick 10. You type out the word, you go to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, type out the definition for each of them. And this is where people ask, what's with all the freaking typing? I said, do you have any idea how hard it is to teach a dyslexic to read? It takes years, at 4 to 5 years at a private dyslexic school at $75K a year, and those teachers are 2 years to become certified. Well, here you're typing out the word, you're typing out the definition. And at some point, after 5, 10, 20, 30 times, who knows, the kid will say, Mom, Dad, it's done. I know it. And then they type out the definition. The parents look at that and say, is that essentially correct? If so, they're done. They don't need to type it out anymore. And they will remember that definition 5, 6 years later, 70, 80% of it. So then if they haven't, retype it. Eventually, that usually takes 6 to 18 months. Mostly it's 12 to 18. they're going to develop a vocabulary of hundreds and hundreds of evolved words. And that's when their reading level jumps up by grade levels. Because here's the thing, the front part of the brain deals with word analysis first. If you don't know exactly what the word is, you can't apply word analysis correctly. So I can't help you. So that's the price, typing. So once we do that, we then have the student pick their universal theme. And because it's so specific, it's not exactly what's in their head, but it's close, they can then pick out their ultimate villain. I start off with characters. I eventually move to concepts. Then we have a hero, universal theme, villain into a basic sentence. Do you see how that's an advanced form of word analysis? So then what we do is we would then just go because three really good reasons. Don't worry, articulation's much faster. For each of the good reasons, we turn that reason into a simple universal theme. We go into the script of Michael Jackson's recent movie. We find an exact quote that deals with the beginning, deals with that simple universal theme at the beginning of the movie, and an exact quote, one sentence that deals with it at the end. We put those two together. That's our data. Now, each body paragraph has two quotes. This, by its very definition, is not a BS paper. Teachers can now send this for homework and know that the kids didn't have AI write it because they can show their work. So once you have your two quotes, then we form a topic sentence. And then here's where I can help you improve your paragraph. Have you ever noticed in your writing that when you have your topic sentence and then your data, it doesn't flow very well from one to the next?
I haven't really paid much attention, but yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, typically it does not flow well from one to the next when your topic sentence to your data. So then we're going to apply, have you ever thought about applying a warrant to a body paragraph? A warrant is from the craft of research, which has sold over 1 million copies and shows doctoral students how to do their dissertations. It connects the topic sentence to the body paragraph by answering a how question and answering a why question, which will turn into one or two sentences. So then you have your topic sentence, your warrant, your answer to a how question, a why question, and your quotes. It flows much better. Professors freaking love it. They love seeing that in body paragraph. They have much more respect when they start seeing a warrant. Now, is that every way in how to write a body paragraph? No, but that's how we do most of it. So that's the change that we've made. And what I just described to you, I just showed you how to teach reading and how to write the basics of an advanced body paragraph.
Yeah, some of it was over the top.
People literally have to go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
Time and time again. But the main issue is when I'm teaching this to people, what they're finding is they can use that for, I have had corporate strategists use this. I've had executives use that in different ways to come up with ideas and how do we communicate it. Just look at what I did when we started off. We started off with a broad-based universal theme, which is real great for the 90s when we just had to blast everything out to everybody. When we had a few major news organizations, you had a few TV shows, TV stations, you had a few publications. Now everything's much more specific. So the issue is when you're teaching, and also what I showed you with the words. Here's my, I guess I asked, if you don't know exactly what the word is, how do you apply word analysis? You can't. So my kids, when they know this stuff, and they know this stuff, they can go in and they can start debating their teachers on this is what the universal theme is about. Or when you're trying to communicate anything to anybody, knowing what the universal theme is, and then getting it very specific so you can use that as a lens allows you to just think of what you really want to say. And it's been extremely valuable for anything from advanced artificial intelligence to marketing to just about anything.
Yeah. Now, were there some early challenges that you faced getting your message across because of dyslexia?
Yeah, first 20 years of me doing this, just couldn't get it out there. I'd go and I'd present at major conferences and that sort of thing. I was a reviewer for the International Dyslexia Association for their conference. But it wasn't until the AI allowed me to write well enough in March. It was 03 Pro. Until that came out, Then I went on to Podmatch, and then before I know it, within a couple of months, I was right when I was not supposed to be on the leaderboard, and I figured out the process. I was on the leaderboard. People ask, well, how do you pitch so much? Well, I have a couple of amazing assistants. And one of them, all she does is she listens to podcasts and then she recommends them to me. And then I have a lot of weight to lose, so I swim an hour and a half a day. So I'm literally listening to episodes while I'm swimming. These are the 3 pros. I keep my head out of the water, and I literally wear these as I'm swimming at the Y. And then I'll come back, and after I listen to an episode, I'll say, I want you to pitch this. Here's the angle. Here's what I think. And then I send it to her, and she just sends it out. All right. There's a lot of stuff I can tell you when I'm doing AI. It's like I'm going through my mail. I'm like, well, this is a pain in the neck. I just go, here's to this assistant, and I have it draft up instructions, and I send it out and have them do it. And they say, just let me know when this is done. And then there's a lot of back and forth. It's not easy getting on a podcast. You're just not sending something off. There's other discussions you have to prepare for it. But when I noticed, I was looking at like, what numbers do I need to go through? I'm very numbers focused. And I was like, oh, here's a guy that's on the leaderboard who's dyslexic. Oh, he did 100. Then I found out that they don't really care about the number you've done. It's the reviews you have. And I was like, I just had something about 251. And I just kept pushing. And it took a little over a year to get there. And people are like, do you have time to run your business? I was like, well, not really. My business coach has been killing me over the last year. Well, you got to get all this stuff done. I said, yeah, I just don't have the time. I just dumped as much as I could off at my assistants, and it has hurt financially a lot. But now when my book comes out, they say, well, we want to put you on podcasts to spread the idea about the book. And people are approaching me, well, you can hire us. We'll arrange that for you. I said, yeah, I got over 240 that want me back on the podcast to explain the book. They're like, huh? That's the key thing. Because what I've noticed is once you have the book out, then that's what you can send to people, and you're an instantaneous expert. That was one of the key things that I found.
On this podcast, you get a dedicated page, and your book will get promoted on that as well. So,
yeah, you have gotten this down. What I like about what you're saying is, remember all the work you did to publish my first episode with you? And now you have AI doing a lot of it. People are saying, well, what, we can just turn AI to do everything? I said, no. Here's what's going on with artificial intelligence. Firstly, you have to know what good is, whatever you're in. You have to know what good is. And number 2, when you have to know how to fix it when it's not good. You just have to know that. And then what AI is there for is to get you a better and better initial draft. And then you still have to fix it. And you still have to tell it how to get there. But if you don't know how to talk to it, but you know what good looks like and how to fix it when you see it's not good, then learning the other stuff with AI is pretty easy. People think that, whoa, I've been working on AI since, came out. I said, yeah. And you know what good looks like? Not really. Then you're not going to be an advanced user. I am literally over 13 times more productive than most gen ed people with master's degrees who've been around for a couple of decades in my field. You wouldn't believe the amount. I now do more work in a day than I used to do in years.
yeah.
But it's all about the ability to communicate what you're trying to say and get the AI just to do the grunt work.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Totally. I haven't completely automated everything. It is automated, but I still keep across it and just make sure. Because basically what I use is a transcript to rewrite stuff, and I don't have to write it. AI writes it for me. And then when I'm formatting it, I read through it quickly just to make sure that everything looks okay. So I'm still keeping across it.
Well, here's 3 editing modes that I've created that nobody else has heard of that allows me to produce just about publishable grade material. First thing is what I like to call is catastrophic mode. So what you do is pick your AI model, and good grief, if you're going to do this, at least spend $20 a month. I'm currently spending about $250, and it is so worth it. What I do is I'll ask it, and this is strictly for Claude. Chat GPT can't write like Claude can. I picked the most advanced model, which is currently Opus 4.8 with max reasoning, and I always use the max one. And I'll say, I have it create catastrophic mode. I want you to look through this document. I say, reread it with fresh eyes, literally line by line. You're looking for things that absolutely should be there, but are not. And I will run that like 15 times. And I'm not joking. First time it runs, it will say, oh, here's an error here. And it'll rewrite an entire section. All right. And people say, well, can't you loop it and have it redo it again and again and again? Do that if it's not that important. Like doing 20 LinkedIn posts, but if it's something that really matters, no, I have to do it each time. I'm doing 3 things at a time because otherwise you can't loop it. It's junk. Then I have what I call max correction. The max correction, you can just tell the AI, I'm looking for something. How do I correct everything that's here? Just look at, is there any way of making it better? The first one, what did we miss? Then how do I make it better? And the last one is I call it full polish mode. And it's just looking for the standard things you would for an advanced proofreader. And I want each of those separately. Then I'll put them together and run it concurrently until it's down to nothing. And then I use ChatGPT to turn it into a professional PDF document. I give it an avatar and I say, this has already been edited so many times. The writing is locked. You're here to do the images and the formatting. And then literally I have to run through that at least 10 to 15 times. Literally 10 to 15 times. And then it's finally ready. And I send it off to clients. And if you're one of these editors for books, you'll say I'm about 90%. I could have moved this a little here, done a little thing. My clients don't care. They said, this is good, solid work. And they use it from a dyslexic. That's one thing I always found interesting. This has allowed me to be so productive.
Yeah. That's great. Well, you put a lot of work into it. So, it would have to be pretty amazing stuff that you're producing.
Well, yeah. I mean, like literally this is an example with an ADHD kid. His name is Miles. I can tell a story. He's 23. So he's not a kid. He gave me permission. He wants to go into sports management, a very specific part of sports management. So his dad spent all this money to get him prepared to go through some corporate training. It works great for gen ed. And he does like none of the work. But I'll give him 20 documents, each 20 to 30 pages each, and he'll go over them meticulously again and again. And his dad's like, how does he work for you? I said, it's very simple. I'm in his speciality. I'm in his area of extreme interest and ability. And one of the funny things I like to make fun of him about is we're looking at maybe trying to get him a position in LA. And I said, do you know for what you're going into, housekeepers make a lot more money than you do. If you add overtime, they're making a killer more than you are. All right, you make less than a social worker, and you're going to put in a lot more overtime. And I just bust on him on how little he's going to make the first bunch of years of his career. Eventually pays really well. But the first couple of years, and he laughs about it and he'll do all the work I give him because he wants to be successful in this area. You step outside that speciality and forget it. But last semester he had a 3.4, and that's with a class he hated, and he just took the C+. And even with that, he carried a 3.4.
Russell, your work helps parents teach their children about dyslexia at home in a really practical way. What does the average parent often misunderstand about dyslexia, and what is one simple thing they can do today to better support their child?
Well, I like going through examples. My book, if you can read my part of it, is Kimberly. I met her December 27th of 2024. She just spent hundreds of dollars to have the state of Ohio test her kids. And no, Kimberly isn't some super mom academically. She has some college, but she's incredibly bright. Really goes and prepares for her kids. Her 4 kids who are gen ed learned to read brilliantly with traditional methods, according to the state of Ohio. But her son Reed was 10 years old, dyslexic, reading at the 11th percentile, writing at the 4th percentile, which typically means you're going to go to a school like the Windward Academy in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, which has a 98% success rate for $75,000 a year for 4 to 5 years just in tuition, because the student-to-teacher ratio is 4 to 1 or 5 to 1, something like that. So she didn't want to spend 4 to 5 years, and she didn't have an extra $500,000 laying around, and she didn't want to send her son to boarding school. So I started working with her for half an hour a week, and she worked with Reed for an hour and a half a week for the next 8 months. Most parents do 10 to 15-minute sessions. She did 3 half-hour sessions. Over that summer of 25, Reed's friends came to him and said, "We want you in school to be with us socially." So beginning of August, he goes and he goes and he gets tested. Well, even if his mom doubled what he did, he'd still be in special ed. But that didn't happen. His reading went from the 11th percentile to the 64th. His writing went from the 4th percentile to the 65th. I don't know how this happened. His grammar jumped to the 97th percentile. We weren't focusing on grammar much. As of May of 26, he's in mainstream classes with his friends getting generally A's and B's. His mom solved the biggest problem in less than 9 months by using this process. So what is it? It's no secret about how to do dyslexia or ADD or ADHD. You have to focus on the kid's speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability. If you ask them, in your speciality, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed but with little to no organization? They're going to say yes. So you start off at something very specific and you slowly go out. And then you do word analysis followed by articulation the way that I showed you. And the acceleration is extraordinary.
And how important is that early intervention for a child with dyslexia?
This is the biggest mess in the whole field. So I want you to imagine the best thing that could happen is imagine you're like, my kid's dyslexic. How do I find out? And if you can do it when they're 5, you just contact Yale. Okay, just Google Yale dyslexia. They will tell you how a teacher can test for dyslexia for like $50 in the classroom. The teacher can do it. Once you find out they're dyslexic, they have all these programs that will tell you exactly how to fix the reading issue from kindergarten through the end of 3rd grade. Because in the States, 3rd grade, K through 3, we learn to read. 4th and above, we read to learn. And if you fail, you pass the reading test at the end of 3rd grade, most likely the statistics are going to be fine. If you flunk it, you're one of those $75,000 schools, or you're working with me, or it just keeps getting worse because they just don't know what to do. If you solve it, if the school doesn't do what I just described, because once they find out the kid's dyslexic, they have all these programs that you can use, federally funded, like $1 million a piece. Pick what you want. If they don't do that in the United States, the parents will sue the school district a lot of times to force them to pay that $75,000 a year private school. And a judge will look and basically say, "Did you do the Yale thing?" No. Then the judge says, "You are grossly negligent." And these are not normal judges. These are appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the U.S. Senate. And for them to use the word grossly negligent is a really big deal. And it is. And schools don't do it anyway. And it's literally costing the U.S. economy tens of billions of dollars a year.
What are some of the biggest myths that you are still working on debunking for parents?
That dyslexia is a reading problem. Would you like me to turn you dyslexic?
Let's
give
it a go.
Well, here it is. Post-war Japan is history. This is literally taught at Harvard. Why do I mean this turns people dyslexic? Because when I went over to Japan to learn this, to sign up for this class, I was the only one that could read the material. I thought it was a joke. Everybody else couldn't read it. When I give this material to reading teachers, over 70% of them can't get past the first paragraph. So the first essay that I'm using is from Professor Dahya of MIT. It's called Peace and Democracy in Two Systems, External Policy and Internal Conflict. I do this to podcast hosts. They would rather watch grass grow or paint dry. Okay. Why do I use this? Because Professor John Dahya won the Pulitzer and the National Book Award. All right. So the guy is clearly the best writer in his field. So I'm going to ask you I'm going to read 3 sentences out loud. And I'm going to see if you can just tell me what they mean in general. For most people, it turns them dyslexic. You get to see what it feels like. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this out to you, and then your job is just to tell me what it means at the most basic level. That's it. All right? Ever since Japan's seclusion was ruptured by Western nations in 1853, domestic and international politics have been interwoven for the Japanese. What does that mean?
What I never clue.
Okay. How about the next one? Just tell me what you think this means. Slogans used to mobilize succeeding generations convey this interconnection.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
You lost me. You lost me after slogans.
Okay, now, I want you to imagine if you were dyslexic, okay? And let me just get this up. I want you to imagine if you were dyslexic. You're a full-grown man feeling that now. Imagine if you were an 8-year-old boy and everybody else is reading and you can't. Can you see how frustrating that would be?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I teach dyslexics. That's the end point when I'm doing things privately with students. I show them how to read that. Half the kids at Harvard can't. They have the same response you give me. All right. And people ask, well, what's going on? In that first paragraph, he conveys 17 critical pieces of information. It makes you go off the rails. So if you really want to know what it's like to be dyslexic, imagine if I tell you, well, tell me what it means. I don't care if you can do it. If you can't do it, I'm going to take your house. I'm going to take your car. Next, I'm going to get rid of you as a podcast host and you're going to be flipping burgers at McDonald's. What's the darn answer? And when I really press teachers like that, they would just freak out. And I said, you have a master's degree in reading and you can't do this. Now imagine you're 8-year-old and you're dyslexic. They just finally, it hits them. And then they said, well, can you teach us to do this? And I said, no, I can't. Maybe with some extreme effort to do it badly, I'm not going to sign up for that abuse. But the dyslexic has 2.5 times the neural activity, and they can do word analysis all by articulation. All right. And I've noticed what I did. I violated my first rule, huge with this, because this is almost never in the dyslexics area of extreme interest and ability. That's why the motivation and the intelligence have to be so extreme for me even to attempt that. That's the number one rule, and I absolutely violated with it. Why do I keep going back to this? Because when I tell the kids, when they go to college, there are going to be a lot of classes you're going to think just suck. And you got to be able to go through it. So the kids where the teachers describe them as geniuses and they're highly motivated, number one, every kid that I ever taught didn't think that they were intelligent, highly motivated, but their teachers really, really believed it. And number two, then I'd say, okay, we've worked together. You did your freshman year of college. How'd it go? Well, I didn't like these classes, but I went anyway. And I just did it. I said, yeah. And a lot of your peers who didn't like it, yeah, they slept in and got C's. I said, that's the difference of why I can work with you. But if I show the parents how to read this, the kids to read this, it's not a reading problem. The quickest ones that I'll do, I don't use that material until after the kid's 18. They make the decision. I have taught kids to increase and writing's done first. I've taught kids to read that 30 pages within 5 to 6 sessions. And those are 5 to 6 hour sessions each. That's it. This is not something I spend years on. It's something I do over the summer.
You've also built a course for parents from your research. What is the biggest hurdle in translating your research and insights into something accessible and impactful for families?
Her name is Angela. I met Angela on another podcast. She was the producer. And she was extremely skeptical about what I was doing. And she's a certified expert. She has a 2-year master's degree, a certified elementary school teacher in the state of Texas with 11 years of experience. Then she started, when her daughter was born, she became a homeschooling mom. And her 9-year-old son, August, was just doing the reading, but she never really taught the writing. She was so skeptical. Then she did it with him and found out, yeah, this really works. We were supposed to have the first course out in February. And then, now remember why I chose Angela to be the teacher, to be there each week to answer your questions. Because Angela not only is a certified elementary school teacher, she's a homeschooling mom. So she clicks both boxes. So I would say, here's the stuff for the course. And then she would say, well, what about this point? So I would send her, I'm not joking, 8,000 words. I thought she'd kill me. She was happy to get the 8,000 words. Well, what about these 3 questions? And so I sent 20,000 words. And we were supposed to be done in February, said at the worst March. We didn't get it up until mid-May because every time Angela's like, what about this? What about that? That sort of nitpicking drives dyslexics mad. But it's what absolutely had to happen because now it flows really well and it takes parents exactly step by step. How detailed should we be? And all those little questions we solved. AI helped out a lot, but I would send things to Angela and she would look at it. And let me give you an example. Now we're expanding the first course to do the basic body paragraphs. I had Fable 5 redo everything. And then as she's going through it, she's like, I need to add this. And then she's off 2 weeks figuring out how to add that. That level of meticulous detail is what makes this work.
Yeah, so what was your aha moment in realizing that you needed to create something directly for parents?
Well, it was back a bunch of years ago. The people don't understand the intention of how much a tutor has to charge to make a livable wage. And only the super rich could afford it. And I had all these kids that this is probably an offensive term. I don't have anything better. I call it charity cases where I have these amazing kids, but I could only help so many at a time. So then I found out that I needed to make this simplified for parents to use, but also there was this great opportunity. Imagine you're in a big city. I'm just going to use the United States as an example. Everybody wants to go to Harvard or the Ivy League or a top 50, but it's so hard to get in. And what I found is the determining factor is their personal statement. So I want you to imagine, because I've done this several times, a 14-year-old AP English girl says she wants to help out with this stuff. I don't know what it is about girls. A neuroscientist said they're because the brains are different, about several years more mature than boys that age. I'm just saying it's about 90% girls, 10% boys. And they'll say they want to do something unique. So I said, okay, we're going to have you pick out a kid that you can work with. And then they will work with them directly, starting, around 14. I've done as young as 8th grade. And these are super intelligent kids who can relate to their peers really well. And then they bring the kid up to grade level. And that's their personal statement. And compared to a lot of the kids from zillionaire families who go and help build a hut in Africa, which, by the way, is a very popular thing for them to do, this is so much more impactful. I changed Ron's life. I changed Akeem's life. They are now in class doing and here's the documented proof, and they write that, and why they did it, and their feelings and the struggles. It's all real and raw. And that helps them out on their personal statement so much. What I told the school districts they can do, which has not been popular for an idea, I said, you could go to your AP English kids, have them sit with a dyslexic kid, and they can get the one-on-one with a real certified teacher walking around answering questions. That's a way you could do this really inexpensively, and a lot of those kids want to do it for that exact reason. That has not caught on for reasons you can understand, but that's when I go to the parents, they will do that. I have talked to one parent who said, well, my kid needs something to do to help out the community. And I'd explain, well, here's how you do it. And the kid would learn it, and they'd go off and work with a dyslexic kid. It takes longer, but they get there. And that's when I realized I had to make this simple for parents and for everybody else. And it just, I'll be honest with you, it's taken over 20 years to figure it out. Because parents will only do 10 to 15-minute sessions. Yeah. And nothing against parents, but they're so busy. So they'll do 10 to 15-minute sessions once or twice to maybe, if I'm lucky, 4 times a week. And some weeks it's nothing. And my competition, they try to have parents read stuff this much per course. And there's 10 courses. Well, my entire thing is less than that to solve everything. That's the other issue that was so much fun to do.
Yeah. Is there quite a bit of competition around there for what you're doing?
Not effective competition. My effective competition is a Orton-based school. And I'll give you an example of the most successful one. It's called the Gowl School. It's celebrating its 100th anniversary. It's GOW.org. And if you get the scholarship, it's to live on campus, which everybody does practically because it's south of Buffalo in the middle of nowhere. $60,000 a year on average. Normal cost is $86,000. If you send your kids there in 5th grade and they stay through the end of high school, they are as prepared as any of the best private schools in the world. You would love how your kid would turn out. They are especially attuned to turning out well-behaved kids who care about people. They've been at this for 100 years.
Mm.
So if you want to do that, I tell parents, if you have the opportunity to go to one of these private Orton schools, do it. You don't need me, but if you don't want to, literally sell your house, assuming you paid for it, then here's how you can do it at home in a fraction of the time.
Yeah. And I mean, some parents would probably want to do that at home, and then others may want to send them to the schools.
Oh, yeah. I've literally had parents say, well, after looking at everything, because they had the money, we're just going with this Orton-based school. And I said, fantastic. And I told their kids, this is what you want to look at, and it'll be absolutely worth it. And they're like, are you trying to get our business? And I said, I don't care about your business. I want the kid to succeed. There are very few of these seats available anywhere in the world, mostly in the Northeastern United States. And I said, you got one of those seats, but you're going to have to stick with it because it's going to take on average 4 to 5 years.
Mm.
And they did. And it worked out tremendously well. And I said, congratulations. But most families aren't not in that situation. Or they will sue in federal court to have the schools pay for this. And I said, by the time you get done suing them in court, you could have just solved the problem yourself.
Yeah.
Remember, Kimberly did this in about 8 months.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, let's give that a try. Because even if we win, they're sending their kid to boarding school. And most parents don't want that.
Mm. So looking back over the journey that you've had, which is incredible, what is the most important lesson that you've learned about turning a deeply personal mission into a movement that can actually change lives, especially for those with dyslexia in the community?
What I found out is you gotta be real. If the parents and the kids think that you're doing this just because you want to make a buck for the only reason, it's not going to work. And then what I found out is when I explaining to the kids, I have up to 3 questions that I ask them. And they're like, how did you know? One of the most funniest times I had a kid I was asking him these questions and he's like, how did you know? And he's looking around. His mom said, but she just deadpanned this so well. Well, there are these hidden cameras all over the place. She's been watching you for months. And he's like, where? And then everybody started laughing, and he started laughing. And I said, no, I went through this. I know exactly what you're going through. And one of the funny things is when I'm talking to Angela's son, August, he's 9. He's trying to get out of his work. And I'll tell him, August, I know exactly what you're going to try to do to get out of this. And I would tell him. And his eyes would just bug out. And I'm like, I know what you're thinking before you're thinking it because I was you. I know exactly what you're thinking, and I told your mom how to get past it. And they always test the waters. He's testing it much less.
Yeah. And what advice would you give someone who has a similar personal mission, but is struggling to get it out into the world?
What you have to do is you have to look in the mirror and ask yourself, is it worth the price? All right. And what I can tell people is I'm now 52. This is the most productive decade of anybody's work life in general. And it reminds me of the last episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. What do we leave behind? And what I can tell people is, I'm going to be at this for decades more, but I have left something meaningfully behind. And a lot of them realize that they have maxed out their career. They're in their last major decade, and their effect on the world is going to be forgotten, the way it is for most people. All right. If you want to take a shot at something like this, I would say get very comfortable with artificial intelligence. Okay. You are going to be spending $200 a month at least at one model and probably 20 and more for other ones. Get used to the fact that you're going to be spending a very long time to get the word out and not to make the mistakes that I did. I would tell you, get on Podmatch, focus on it. And yeah, spend the year. Don't do 100 podcasts to think that's enough. It's not the podcast, it's the reviews. Shoot for at least 200 reviews and just grind it out. And then from there, you'll have an online presence that you can go from. The other thing I'll say is once you're done with that, go and do your TEDx talk. Yes, that's what I'm working on. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of Nowheresville TEDx or Manhattan. It doesn't matter. Once you do a TEDx talk, people will take you much more seriously. And don't hire a coach. I use AI for this stuff, and I'm not spending $10,000, $15,000 doing this.
Yeah. Absolutely. You got to do a repetition on the podcast, get yourself out there, share the message, and build up that credibility. And then, like you're doing, writing a book as well.
Well, yes, but here's the thing. Do the TEDx talk, then turn that into a book. You're going to have all these people. We have 2 dyslexics writing a book. Place joke here. My co-author is Evelyn White-Bay, who's on the Dyslexia Task Force for the New York State government, is one of the few teachers. So when you're doing a book, there's all these companies will say, hey, we can do this for you for $15,000, $25,000. And they're right. What I did is I used AI to draft it out. And then I hired 2 ghostwriters from Fiverr. They were Fiverr choice ones I could afford. I sent it to each one of them. They rewrite it completely. Then I got a co-author because now I have something that's decent. And I let the co-author do whatever they want to with. That's the price you bring in a co-author, they get whatever they want. Then you go and you bring in the editors, and it's a pain in the neck. And then you can go and then use that once your book is out there to go, and you're not making any money selling the book. You're getting copies of the paperback and mailing it out to like 100 people a month, and you're timing it. You're using the AI to create an avatar of them and to write something kind, and you're boxing it up, and it's worth going to a service to mail. You're talking about $20 a book. I have Amazon. I'm going to have Amazon print them out. And out of that, that's where you develop, that's where you get your consulting work from.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, how do you maintain that drive and passion when the work is so deeply personal?
Because I came back to the New York State Assembly, where I had a 15 credits of A- recommendation, they flunked me. Anytime I look back at that hell and I say, I'm not going through this crap, that feeling of rage is still with me. I'll give you a little hint. That happened 29 years ago. It's still in my transcript. To thank the political science department of the State University of New York Center at Buffalo, I've said this in over 300 podcasts. Maybe they might want to change their mind at some.
Yeah. So what's next for you? You're writing the book. You're working on your TEDx talk. What else is coming up in the future?
We're expanding our courses because this got me. I always had to find out what's our natural endpoint. Then I'm listening to a podcast with a head guy on Google, runs Google AI. And he said their biggest problem is how to come up with a policy statement. Problem statement. They're the smartest people in the world. They can hire any consultant, pay them tens of millions of dollars, and they won't even feel it. And their biggest issue is a problem statement. What do I mean by a problem statement? When you're talking about the craft of research and how you do a dissertation, context, get everybody on the same page. I gave you an advanced version of that tonight with how to do an advanced body paragraph. The biggest issue is the unique problem statement. And then it's just following that through in a solution. If you ask the right questions and answer it, you're supposed to have a meaningful impact, a change that's going to really compel the company forward in whatever you're working on. Well, when you look at the craft of research, it tells you how to do it from the top down. Well, from dyslexics, we start from the bottom up. So I show students how to do that. One of my most advanced students, well, this is where we're going to end him working with him, is coming up with a question, a unique problem statement, and then we'll turn him over to a senior professor where he can then go and do the work and publish. His name is Grayson. He's not dyslexic in the least. He's in the 99th percentile for math and science. He wants to get his PhD, work at NASA to terraform Mars. And I'm not joking. So I create custom materials for Grayson. He's reading at the 12th grade level. His content is third year college, and he's a bit on the young side. How old do you think Grayson is?
12?
He's 10.
10.
His dad's teaching him how to do that advanced paragraph I showed you. Grayson is about as advanced as you're going to get. All right. And yet he's going through the exact same process that I teach dyslexics. And the end point is how to come up with that unique problem statement. My ability by combining what's in the craft of research with overcoming dyslexia, and I start off at the very beginning point with word analysis followed by articulation, and I show people how to make those connections. And remember, Google doesn't know how to do this, and I'm teaching it to a 10-year-old. That's how powerful understanding how the neuroscience actually is. What I'm shocked about is gen ed kids love what I'm doing. Another podcaster I ran into went on her show a couple of times. She was a principal in a couple of different states and a teacher. So she has 3 kids. 2 are twins who are super 11-year-olds. And they're so advanced, she's telling me that in school, the teachers just send them on the computer because they're already way advanced on the stuff they're supposed to be doing at the end of the year at the beginning. One wanted to learn how do tsunamis start from earthquakes. So I created an exact document specifically for him. His brother, not joking, explain Galileo's telescope and astronomy in that period of time in Italy. So I gave him something custom on that. They are so attuned to what that material is. They just love it. No pushback. They just jump right into it. And it surprised me about, like Angela's other son, Alfred. He's a super STEM kid. He's 12. He's a science, technology, engineering, math kid. He's interested in hawks as hunting birds. So he gets customized stuff exactly on what he's looking at. And this is the way of the future. And then the other thing that I find is parents like having the instructions created exactly for them. And that's the future. And I'm now in the process of teaching my tech guy to create a course so we can teach parents. But the amount of work, a lot of parents said, well, my $20 subscription to Claude isn't enough. I said, yes, you're going to spend $100. They're like, huh? Big eyes just bug out. I said, how much is a tutor in your area? Well, that'll cover it for about an hour. I said, yeah, you're going to spend $100 on Claude so you can do this customized. They're like, whoa, this is a lot of work. I said, yes, but then your kid will actually do the work. And that's what gets them to do it.
Yeah. That's great. So if people were listening to this episode and they want to get in touch with you, can you tell us what have you got on offer? How do they get in touch with you?
The best thing to do is just to go to dyslexiaclasses.com. Again, that's dyslexiaclasses.com with an S. There's a button there that says download free guide. Just click on that, answer 3 questions, and you can set up a time to speak with me for about a half an hour. Typically, we'll talk with your kids at that point, ask them a couple of questions. And then they're like, yeah, that's how I want to learn. That's how my brain works. And then we send parents to our school webpage. We have a course that starts off at $147 a month. And depending on the access you need, it goes up from there. But it allows parents to go through like Kimberly did. She solved this in 8 months. Most parents, it's going to take a bit more time. Understand my competition is full-time specialists at a student-to-teacher ratio of 4 to 1 or 5 to 1. For 4 to 5 years. We can do it faster with a lot less time, but it's still a significant investment in order to solve this. And I'll just leave you with this. I had kids or parents would come and the other parent would think that AI is the devil, literally. And I'd say, okay, we can show your kids how to how to do AI by not doing AI. The book came out in 1995 called The Craft of Research. And when they're 18 and out of high school and graduated, it's their call. And the parents are like, yeah, we can do that. But then these kids also then don't do AI through college. Then they get hired and they have to use it. And I had this happened so many times, but I had example. This is how it generally works. The kid will call me. I have to use AI. I don't know what to do. I'm like, okay, I trained you in the craft of research. You practiced it in college for years. Just go and just do context. I don't care what AI model. I don't care if you talk to it, type with. I don't care. Come back when you're done. A couple of days later, they come back. I did it. And I said, okay, go off and do problem statement, the unique problem statement. And they come back a couple of days later. I hate this. And I said, welcome to the grown-up world. And then they come up with a solution. And then they go in and they're all mopey and the boss takes it and goes, That's a problem we've had for years, and it was just never worth us solving. You solved it. This is great. And then within a matter of a few weeks, I am not joking, they're training their peers on how to do AI. If you know the craft of research, know it. You can do AI. That's the key thing. And parents because again, I know my kids have to know it, but my husband thinks it's the devil. And I said, okay, we can teach them without, and I explain what it is. And the dad's like, okay, we can do that. They're like, where are they going to do this? I'm like, in the library, like we did when we were in college with 3x5 cards with stacks of books. And he's like, okay, I can do that. And I'm like, how old is your kid? 13. I said, they got 5 more years of this and they don't need to worry. AI, don't even worry about it. When they're 18, they can make their own decision. Okay, I'll try to convince them not to. But then I said, yeah, that's between you and them when they're an adult. And the key thing is I've been able to actually do this and show the kids how to be much more productive with AI by not even having them look at it.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll put links into the show notes, and also on your episode page on the Champion Mindset Collective, there'll be a whole lot of information about you, your links, an article, a practical guide that people can download as well for free. Be all the videos, and when your book's ready, we'll be putting that on there as well.
Well, yes, that's great. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, before you go, I've got 6 very quick questions for you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And you can answer these in a short sentence or a single word. The first question is, how do you define success, and has that definition evolved for you over time?
Success is people I work with being able to go and get good paying jobs whenever they want to do.
Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
Professor James Holmes, a dyslexic professor at SUNY Center of Buffalo, because he literally taught me how to think in multi-level causality. And that's exactly what I applied in law school to do so well.
What is something that you believe that others may disagree with?
That reading is not the main issue with dyslexia. It's a symptom, like a cold. A stuffy nose is a symptom. The real issue is in your chest. I go right after what the actual issue is, which is if you ask a dyslexic in their speciality, do they have ideas flying around their head at light speed but with little to no organization? The answer is yes. We have to force the brain to organize itself. And we use writing as a way to measure that.
If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
To think more carefully before I did that internship in 1997. Because that literally changed everything for my life.
What is one message that you'd like to share with the world?
That dyslexia is actually a superpower. That overactive front part of the brain using word analysis followed by articulation, it is an exceedingly unfair advantage. Quick example. If you look at Shark Tank, there are 6 sharks. Dyslexics make up 5 to 10% of the population. Half the sharks, Barbara, Damien, and Mr. Wonderful, the bald guy, are dyslexic. It's an unfair advantage once you're in the real world.
And what is last question for you is, what does it mean to you to be a champion and have a champion mindset?
It means your success is not measured by what I can do, how effective I can use AI or any of that other stuff. It's how effective I can teach parents to teach their kids so that they can be successful and to get the kids to actually want to do the work.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite mindset quote that you love?
Yeah, people think Walt Disney was dyslexic, and my favorite quote I have is one he made in the early 60s. It's a paraphrase, and he essentially said, it's fun to do the impossible.
Awesome. Thank you, Russell, for a wonderful conversation. This episode truly showed us that the clarity doesn't come from silence, but it's consistent and meaningful communication. And it highlights the power of sharing your story and again, and truly make an impact and help others see things differently. So thank you for your wisdom and your sharing your insights with us today. For anyone listening, if you found this conversation valuable, please subscribe and also share it with someone that might need to hear it. And you'll see all the links in the show notes as well as on the episode page. Explore the Champion Academy and start building a champion mindset. And you can find that link in the show notes as well. And thanks for being part of the Champion Mindset Collective. We'll see you next time. Lastly, I just want to say you are loved, you're worthy, champion your life, champion your greatness, and have an amazing day.